A title that was anticipated, hyped and delayed for some time, specifically on Wii U, Watch Dogs is an open-world sandbox game with a pungent theme of hacking. It had its first line of code written in 2009 by Ubisoft Montreal, a subsidiary of Ubisoft, the French developer who rivals Electronic Arts in scale, making them one of the biggest in the world. Ubisoft Montreal alone hires 2,700 people and is based in Canada. Like many developers, you can see elements of previous games in their recent past within Watch Dogs, such as Splinter Cell with its stealth-based mechanics, and Assassin's Creed in the way you survey areas. These throwbacks are a saving grace within the overall experience. It was released on PlayStation 3, 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One and PC in between November 18th to December 4th, 2014. The Wii U version, however, was delayed to be the best version it can be. It released finally on the 27th of May, and to no surprise did not sell well. It sold badly on the system and it was criticised for its lack of DLC, which continued the main story. One of the early claims of Ubisoft is that it was an open world shooter that could go beyond the limits of today's open world games. Unfortunately, the title doesn't quite achieve that goal, as it's painfully hindered by technical limitations not only on the Wii U, but on all platforms it was downloaded to. The story, like most games, has something that sets you up to take it seriously, and in some ways it does hook you. But the unusual way in which it does this is somewhat abrupt and cliché, at very least to start with. Short, overinflated lines of dialogue are placed within the opening scene, which is all good for the trailer editor who would have gleamed hearing the open-ended phrases, but to a new coming player, experienced or not, it may have been predictable.
Oh, so you wanna fuck with my family, huh? Break into my house, try to steal my shit. Do you know who I am? Do you?
A wannabe king in a tiny castle.
You play as a generic protagonist, Aiden Pierce, a criminal more or less that has gotten himself into the world of hacking. His motivation is driven by revenge, after a job went bad and his niece was killed. Finding out why things went sour will have the player completing about 90% of the campaign, with some interesting story arcs along the way, tuning up some emotion in the sometimes painfully generic hero or villain that Mr. Pierce is. It's hard to tell sometimes what is going through his head morally. I do like the duality between Aiden and his sister, whom is getting tied up with his wildlife. She is innocent and oblivious to the widespread anarchy that rules and defines Aiden's character. Lucky and not so lucky for him, it just so happens he has chosen the best time to be a hacker within the city of Chicago. The city is the first to trial CTOS, an operating system with algorithms, sensors, cameras and all sorts of intelligent systems designed to keep its inhabitants safer. But does it? Vis-a-vis, Aiden has the power to tap into such system, pinch information using his phone just by looking at an individual, opening bridges, raising spike strips, blockades with literally one tap. According to Ubisoft, having hacking down to a one-button interaction was easy for the player to grasp. They even went as far as working with Kaspersky Lab, an antivirus firm in Russia, to get it right. With Aiden's one-touch powers, you are able to level them up by killing enemies, completing missions, and doing side missions. There are a fair few side missions that usually range from taking down a gang, interrupting a convoy, or simply racing through the city. More specifically, his powers allow him to benefit greatly, calling into the confusion of his morality, as it really seems to be about him benefiting him. Mr. Pierce can take songs from passers-by to add to his playlist, take money from bank accounts, read into other people's text messages. It's pretty dodgy. These activities can lead to quests of a criminal nature, such as picking up mysterious packages or stopping a stalking from going too far. Using the somewhat unnecessary crafting system, you can create gadgets with the random materials found within the city and shops. If you know the right guy, you can skip the crafting and get the tool you need. The animation that's presented most of the time is Aiden just using his phone, yet you need the materials to use these abilities after forming them into tools. This just doesn't make sense to me. Tools can be crafted, for example, improvised explosive devices, power blackouts which allow you to turn the power off to the city, jammers which stop enemies or even civilians calling for backup, frag grenades, pills that enhance your focus or bullet time more or less, and a few other knickknacks along the way. The style of game is a little hard to define. It's a twist on the sandbox genre, a open world or city in this case. Cameras are placed all over the city. You can jump from camera to camera, even having entire missions based solely in the system, which requires some good spatial awareness as you bounce through buildings using only the CTOS, a highlight of more intelligent design of gameplay. A lot of your time will be spent driving from point A to point B. Unfortunately, driving is one of the major problems with Watch Dogs, and more so on Wii U due to technical issues. The cars look detailed enough, they have their different ranges of speed and there are enough of them, but for some odd reason control completely differently to how you would expect. It's not impossible to get used to it, but it feels bad. The way the cars control, the physics just don't match up with the vehicles that in real life would weigh a ton or more. If you have played GTA 5, you will likely be quite disappointed by the strange way cars handle. The same goes for motorcycles that often suffer from this unusual feel. It's hard to describe, but it's not good. In part due to the Wii U quality of the port, the frame rate can get sluggish, almost creating a delay between controller input and the action of the vehicle. The same can be said for some gunfights. Graphics do make you realise that Watch Dogs is a AAA game. It goes without saying. Unless you were far out in some remote part of the world, Ubisoft was probably able to reach you with its vast advertising campaign to get people aware of their new intellectual property. But it really suffers from some basic technical problems, the worst being frame rate, followed by render distance and some really cheap shortcuts to induce performance. One of the most disheartening is seeing cars pop in and out when you drive down a highway, noticing that while cars are off screen, they stop producing light on an object in your view. In regards to people, it is true that every person's profile is unique that you probe with your phone. Often you'll find the most inane statuses that don't really tell you much about a person. It's a good concept, but it's pretty obvious that it has not lived up to its potential. There is one particular sound effect that gets played again and again and again. Even in important cutscenes, apparently Chicago has a serious cat problem, because the same cats are fighting in nearly every alley. The in-game soundtrack, the radio station, is so bland by comparison to GTA's broad range of songs, commercials and radio talk shows. It's hard not to compare a game that really does take from GTA's style. Commercials and radio shows in Watch Dogs are virtually non-existent, bar a headline or two.
Violence erupted last night in Rossi, Fremont. The notorious neighborhood has suffered a wave of violence over the last few years as members of the Black Viceroys clashed,
making Watch Dogs dull. There were some songs that stuck in my head. The composition was much more endearing than the playlist, and it had sort of a techno feel to it. Online, thankfully, was not as nerfed as the rest of the port. During the course of the game, any console that has Watch Dogs running can be invaded by other players. In my own experience, it was a matter of seconds before I was loading into someone else's game when I was on the offensive and trying to improve my notoriety points, which can be used to access certain skills. Being invaded can be annoying, but honestly, it's a blast. There are several modes to pick from. You can pick tail, hack or race. Tailing involves you jumping into someone else's city and watching them from afar undetected until you fill your percentage. Race is self-explanatory, and hacking has you finding a player, targeting them, then initializing a hack, which will alert them to your presence inside their world and will create a radius in which you will have to be in, so they'll know you're around. As your hack continues, the radius will get smaller and smaller, making it harder and harder to avoid detection. To you, the player doing the invading, you are Aiden Pierce, but to the victim you'll be one of the hundreds of NPCs in the city. It's up to them to figure out who isn't quite exhibiting standard behaviour. Once I was in a shop buying clothes, only to walk outside the door and notice at the last second a mine had been attached, causing me to half explode, making me exhibit a strange mixture of non-stop laughter and frustration that I fell for such a dumb trap. But because it was seamless and there was no player joining message, it was a blast to be surprised, and it made me feel the city was more alive. In conclusion, personally I enjoyed Watch Dogs. Its story, which can be bland, its driving which feels ridiculous, and its technical disappointments are abundant, but the premise comes at a great time, when the NSA has been revealed to track information on a huge scale. It's hard not to imagine that, as marketed as this is to an action-orientated hyper-technology enabled demographic, that some of it might actually very well be happening for real. At least there is a lot to do if you are a completionist, such as clothes shopping, online fun, and random Easter eggs to be found around the city.
Come on. Come on, shoot me. Come on, fucking shoot me. Go. Ah! If you ever fucking let's do it again. Come on.
No.
Come on.
Okay.
Ah!
Fuck!
Oh, baby, I love you, baby. Come on, one more time.
As well as the aforementioned side missions. There are surprisingly a lot, and they are quite in-depth. There is even a mode that allows players to go on digital trips, which are games within the games. I bought alone a DLC for the title, which was a bizarre version of the city which had me pinned against robotic inclinations of CTOS. That's just one of the several trips you can take. If there was a sequel, there is no question I would buy it, probably on another platform due to more DLC support and an improved frame rate. It's heavily implied by messages throughout the game that there will be, not to mention Ubisoft's emphasis or the company mantra, that every game we release is a franchise. While I enjoyed the title, critically I feel that someone expecting the quality that Splinter Cell Blacklist or Assassin's Creed 3 produced in both gameplay and story would be sad at the overall presentation of this title. It's a shame. Even more so that the Wii U version was delayed by 6 months to be a somewhat sloppy port with virtually no gamepad features, bar a map on the gamepad and gamepad only display. Disappointing, ignoring the potential of being able to use the gamepad, such as a camera feed or a phone or a hacking tool in puzzles, just to name a few that come off the top of my head. Instead, they just placed a map on the gamepad, which during my second playthrough I didn't even use at all. After 6 months, it's just not good enough. Also throwing salt into the wound, Ubisoft announced that Watch Dogs for Wii U is the last mature title, or the last title at all it seems, for the system. If Ubisoft had executed this franchise the first time with the quality we've come to expect from a billion-dollar developer, then perhaps I wouldn't be so harsh in saying that you would be better off waiting for the sequel, as by then I hope that all technical limitations and teething issues of a new franchise will be knocked out with a shiny new model in Watch Dogs 2.0.
I know what you're doing. I know you're chasing after the people that did this. And you do that, you put us all in danger again.
You are not in danger. Because I protect you.
Do you hear yourself? Aiden, why can't you stop?
Because... I need to know.
You are my brother, and I love you. Promise me you will stop. But promise me you will stop. We need this as a family.